All right, camera speeding.
3, 2, 1, action. Good. Good, cut, I like that.
What's going on, everybody? It's Rob with Animus Visual. Today, I want to do something different and start a series of cinematic breakdowns. I am a DP locally here in Tampa, and I do a ton of different jobs for different companies. So I figured, why not? Might as well use the BTS from these shoots. And of course, the final piece, which often is not necessarily edited or graded by me, but usually shot and DP'd with me on set. So I want to go over my thought process and what I do and how I set up and what I do to light a certain scene. Today we have one from an app called Laurie's Love regarding cancer, and it was a really short 4-hour day that we kind of set up a couple lights to do the shot with. Believe it or not, it actually took quite a while to get the look dialed in because we wanted it to look very natural. So let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, so taking a look here at our main scene, this is generally our hero shot, AKA probably the shot that hangs on the longest or is shown the most in a piece. And offhand, I just want to go over the light sources that we have here and of course my thought process. So first we get in this room and I take a look and I decide which angle we're going to shoot our shot from. So offhand, we needed to use a dolly, and I knew that the director wanted a slow push, kind of a long shot that we wanted to do. So we needed enough room to push the dolly through. We found this perfect doorway right here that shows exactly where we were going to push the dolly from and to. Ultimately, we're going to end up framing with the couch on a fairly wide / medium shot of our talent. Next, I take a look and make sure that all house lights are off. It's pretty much how I start, unless they're absolutely necessary to create enough ambient fill in the room. I tend to start with that and then add our own film lights to get the levels back how we need them or if we need them. Now, taking a look here at our actual shot, we have our two light sources, which are right now this sun, which is going through the windows back here, as well as these two practicals here, which are casting a little bit of light here on the couch and a tiny bit right here on her sweater. Now, why are these important? The main thing is, number one, you have to look at motivation, light motivation. In this case, I see that there's a huge window in the background. My first concern is, okay, that window could possibly get blown out. We may not have enough ambient fill in the room without it looking too sourcey, or we may have to put up really big sources to kind of hide our lights basically and make it look very natural. So ultimately, that was my first concern, is how much of the window or how much outside of the window are we going to be able to see based on our light balance between the indoor and the outdoor. The other thing, of course, is having some kind of motivated light with this practical. So knowing that this practical is going to be on, notice how it's not even blown out. So we expose correctly for the practical and of course try to expose our best for the back window. Now, a lot of people get hung up on windows being blown out versus not, or having shears or seeing through them or not. Personally, I'm a person that likes to have something through the window. I like to see some kind of texture, whether it's, you know, a little bit of a foliage, tree, some sky if it's overcast. It depends what's out there, but I do want to see a little out there and don't really care for a completely blown out window. However, I knew that this was going to be a moody piece, so I already kind of knew that we weren't going to be able to see directly through the window without lighting the hell out of the inside of this room. So that's one thing we decided early on, is that we needed to go ahead and balance as best we could without making it look too crazy sourcey. Therein lies our main and first objective and issue. So my first thought is, okay, if the motivated light is coming from the back, we can't really just bam light her from the front here or from this side, because number one, it would be flat and lose all the shape since we need some shadow on the camera side. And number two, the other piece was, where is this light coming from? There is no motivation other than the sunlight from the back, and of course these practicals, but the practicals isn't going to do enough of a job to really make this feel how we wanted it. Looking at this BTS, you can see that there was a couple different things that we tried. So first off, we tried Amaran, and we set that up in different ways. I tried to bounce it into this large mirror that we had here off camera left. I don't know what that is, but anyway. So I try to bounce it off the mirror to kind of keep it still natural, and it's basically just like bounce light coming around in the room, and try to keep it as least sourcey as I possibly can. The Amaran F22 is only a 2x2 fixture, so ultimately that didn't really do it quite as well as I would have liked, but it did work okay, just not where we wanted to go. Then the director decided that he did want to see outside the window some, and so we tried to dim everything down, basically ND down the camera, and that brought the window back into exposure. However, now we had the issue of having to light both the room in a natural looking way and Talent in a natural looking way. So when we tried it, it definitely looked very spotlit, like there's literally a spotlight on Talent. Didn't look natural at all. So finally what we decided was to take this Amaran. We had an Amaran F22 right here that we bounced into a corner of the room, kind of into the ceiling / wall, and give a little return back to Talent on this side. As you can see, it's subtle, ever so slight on this side, which is the way I really wanted that key to come in, because I didn't want it to feel sourcey. I literally wanted it to feel like it's the sun bouncing around this whole room and kind of just doing its thing. All right, in addition, director also requested to have some kind of light to extend this practical's motivation. So ultimately we ended up booming over a Nanlite 60B, basically to give a little more kicker to the side of the sweater here and just cut her out a little bit more from the background, as well as add a little bit of spill here on the table and just rim this area out. So definitely was a nice little touch to kind of extend what would be motivated by the practical. It definitely added a little extra layer of color separation, since the majority of this room is very cool, and obviously the daylight coming from outside is 5600 or around, and of course this is a very warm practical, so we decided to go ahead and match our Nanlite 60B to a warm tone to kind of match that practical. Another thing we did in this scene is added a big 4x4 floppy here, and it's a floppy, so we folded it down. So technically it's 4x8 feet right here off camera right, literally right off the couch. As you can see, it's quite dark over on this side, and added a ton of contrast here on that side of her face. We also did a Nanlite 720 outside the windows with a spot attachment to ping the shears a little bit and fill the room with a little bit more of a soft ambient. And then the last thing I decided to do, for two reasons, and honestly it was kind of not really a mistake, but it was a happy mistake. I turned on a 300D that was on the floor and kicked that 300D here on the floor into a piece of white furniture, and it's literally looked like a small ottoman, kind of like a little drum, and that 300D was kicking pretty low. But number one, what it did is it bounced light kind of radiating all through the room to give a tiny bit of ambient fill, and also could feel like a motivated light source, like a sunbeam hitting a part of the room and casting an ambient. But the other thing it did, and we found out in the close-ups, is the eye light. So you can't see it in the shot, I'll show you in the next shot, but it created a beautiful eye light because it was kind of at floor level. So she's looking down on the phone, the eye is facing kind of lower. So if we had a light that was way up high, you're not really gonna see that eye light in the other shots. So as you will see here in a bit, it came in super handy. So moving on, we'll go up to the close-up of the phone shot, which was an easy shot, and we didn't change a whole ton of stuff, but I'll go over it. This, we used the Komodo with a Zeiss 85mm lens. This is a Zeiss CP2. I forgot to go over the previous, but that was also a Zeiss lens, EF adapted to my Komodo X. We didn't do a whole ton of changes. However, I did sweeten up the shot a little bit. Since it's a close-up, that just references basically taking some of the lights from the wide or adding additional lights in the close-up to further make the shot look even nicer. So offhand, what I did was I brought in the 4x4 neg a lot closer on this side, which really took out some light. And then on this side, I actually went ahead and moved the 60B a little closer to kind of add a little bit more rim here on the side of her hand. The other thing we were contending with is reflections on the cell phone. So what we ended up doing is taking a 4x4 floppy, and we placed it directly overhead behind camera. and I might have a BTS for that. But basically we did that to block reflections from the ceiling, and of course a camera or anything behind her that would show as a reflection on the phone, so that blocks the reflections. Last thing I did, and it's hard to tell on the screenshot, but if you look at the video, I took a nail light tube and I placed it standing up here, basically casting this small little ray of light here. It's not super important, super key. However, I'd like to kind of just make shots a little bit more interesting. Ultimately, this is just a busy background with, you know, a rug, table, etc. But I wanted to add just a little pop of light here to kind of just add a little bit more contrast and a little bit separation, a little bit of interest in the background. So very minor, but I think it just adds a nice little touch. All right, and this is the final shot of the piece. In essence, what I wanted to do here is just, again, sweeten the shot for the close-up, and all we really did was make sure that our light was looking as good as it could coming from this side, which again was the Amaran. I went ahead and switched the nail light 6 dB to give a little bit more highlight around this area here, so it further is motivated from this practical here. Again, the negative, I definitely brought it just a little bit closer to her face to kind of add that soft contrast going around the side of her face. And you can see that transition from light to dark, all the way from light on this side to dark on this side of her face. Just transition very smoothly and give you a very, very natural look. I did not want to key very harshly. I didn't want to key with a softbox or anything like that, because it would be easy to tell that there was a light kind of straight on subject. And that was a director choice as well as a DP choice, that I just didn't want it to look sourcey. I didn't want it to look like we had a light source there. I really wanted to make it look like it was natural. Now, the other thing that I forgot to mention earlier, and I have to mention it now because it's obviously here, outside of this window, we also put a Nanlite 720, not bicolor, and that was kicking through a spotlight mount into the room from right behind. Now, on the earlier shots, we made sure it wasn't kicking directly into camera. We had the stand kind of high up, and it was helping cast a little bit of shadow on the side walls. In this shot, we went ahead and took the Nanlite 720 through the spotlight mount, and that was shooting almost directly behind her head. So that way, when the camera went around her face here, you could see this flare kind of pop up here, and it looks, you know, nice, bright, happy, cheery, etc. So definitely a director choice. He loves flares. I'm not opposed to it. I think obviously it would have to, for me to be like perfectly happy with it, it should look like a sun ultimately, and I think a sun that low would be a lot warmer, etc. But this is more of a creative choice, and that's one thing you got to remember on shoots like these where you're just doing something creative, is that it's art, and ultimately it's subjective, and everybody has different opinions. So oftentimes I give my, you know, professional opinion on how something should look, but ultimately client, director, etc. Has final say on how they want the frame or shot to appear. So again, cool little flare coming through here as part of just this time where the commercial is kind of coming into a happy moment or happy mode. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Wanted to go over this specific commercial ad, etc. I do have a ton more of these to go. Lots of BTS that I've had from just previous shoots. So I plan on hopefully doing more of these. If you like it, please leave a like, comment. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more of these. Until next time, thanks for checking it out.